Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell and I love cake, especially chocolate fudge cake with a middle layer of cherry goo slathered in white cream cheese frosting with ice cream. Moose Tracks chocolate chip mint ice cream, to be exact. That is my brand of cake. What's yours? So when a podcast guest promoter contacted me to feature Allison Capaldi, I asked why. She said because Allison has a delicious way of growing businesses called the layer cake approach to brand building. As you'll hear, Allison loves analogies. She thinks of them as like parlor tricks to connect with the subconscious buying brain. She lives by her layer cake analogy because it's a way to highlight that you have to think about the layers behind your brand. Because like brands, two cakes can look very similar from the outside, but it's what they're like when you cut in and taste them that make you come joyously back for more. But like cake, all brands need to be built upon a flavorful story that is uniquely your own. What if you could bake that story in minutes, not the months it usually takes to craft a clear and compelling brand story strategy? Well, you can do that with our new Story Cycle Genie. But don't take my word for it. Steve Smallman just put his brand through the Story Cycle Genie. He is one of the principals at 15-4. They're an East Coast-based design and branding firm that uses storytelling to humanize tech companies and convert prospects into brand loyalists. Here's an excerpt from our conversation last week about what he experienced in baking his brand cake story with our Genie. What was your experience with the Genie?
I thought it was great. So I saw both a quick output that was more than satisfactory, like, okay, I can work with this. Man, did you just save a couple weeks of work. It described 15-4 as a strategic creative agency that transforms complex B2B narratives into compelling brand experiences, specializing in enterprise technology and professional services companies through a blend of strategic thinking and creative execution. And I was like, okay, well, that's better than I've ever figured out how to say it. Yeah. I was impressed, and I sent it around to our partners, and my partner, Sam, said, sums it up very nicely, in my opinion. I also like the brand experiences angle, which I think is stronger even than stories.
Then I asked Steve what surprised him about the process.
I think the biggest surprise, when I got all the way down into the landing page copy, there was some very clever, hooky writing. Like, in the high stakes world of PE-backed B2B companies, where time is literally money and scale is everything, your story needs to do more than just inform. It needs to accelerate trust and drive growth. That was sort of the opening story hook for the homepage. I was like, that's good. Like, that's really good. And then the next one was the problem agitation. But in today's crowded B2B landscape, even the most innovative solutions get lost in a sea of competing voices. Complex offerings become confused messages, and lengthy sales cycles slow your path to the next transaction milestone. When it got boiled down into homepage copy, it was an excellent synthesis and distillation of the pitch. And it was in itself, the story format is right there. It's like, here's my opening hook. Here's a statement of the problem. Here's how we can help, and it was just very baked and ready to ice.
And in your experience, how does this compare output-wise with what you get from typical ChatGPT?
I've tended to use general ChatGPT as a first move output that I know I'm then going to go in and kind of rewrite and revoice. Or sometimes it'll give me only one idea or, a crumb that I can use. Whereas this one was like, okay, everything here is good. Like, I might need to tweak something here and there, but I might like this brand experience word in more places, so I'm going to do that. But that's like such a minor copy edit. Yeah, I mean, it's very accurate to what we've done over the years. It's playing into that language we've been using for a while, which we're trying to update, but it got it right and improved it, I think. This would be probably better body copy on our homepage than what's there now, put it that way.
Cool. It sounds like it's given you some ideas on different ways to talk about your business.
Yeah, for sure. You've always got to do some editing and tweaking and put it in the right voice, perhaps. But generally, I was like, whoa, okay. When Park figures out the revenue model for this, I got to sign up.
If you're interested in learning how you can refine your brand story in minutes, not months, check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. That's all one word, story cycle, the dash, and then genie. Because you have to have the right ingredients to start baking your layer cake approach to brand building. And once you've baked it, according to Allison Capaldi, you have to first get your people to love it as much as you do.
Culture as well internally is huge. If your employees don't believe your brand and know and nail it down exactly, then you're never going to get anywhere. We do internal contests. We have a New York Times Slack channel where we do the connections every day. We are very, very vocal as a remote company, and it makes it feel like we're together. We'll surprise people with cookies. We will do different things. So I think also fostering a culture within your company helps propel the brand as well.
Allison started her passion for brand building in 2002 when she was one of the first employees at Moose Jaw Mountaineering, founded by Robert and Jeffrey Wolf. If you're a follower of our show, then you probably heard Robert's story a few weeks ago on episode number 501. She worked with the brothers on their next venture too, called CrowdRise, and most recently with them and actor Edward Norton on Zeck, a brand that takes the misery out of board meetings. Her layer cake approach to brand building is not about creating a brand that looks good and says the right things, but it's about the layers, the details. For instance, like rewriting the minuscule fine print on a receipt to make it actually engaging. And for the 2% of the people who actually read it, well, they're yours forever. Allison is a graduate from the University of Michigan, is a decent singer, brings her own hot sauce to her sister-in-law's house, and can't go to bed unless the kitchen is clean. Hello there, Allison. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it only took us like 3 months to make this happen with sickness and microphone challenges and everything else. So thank you for hanging in there with me.
Oh, no problem. I'm excited. It's the best way to end January.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I had a conversation with your colleague, Robert Wolf. It aired a couple weeks ago, and what a great guy. It was so much fun hearing about, his journey as an entrepreneur, first with Moose Jaw and then CrowdRise and now Zeck. And you've been right along his side the whole way.
Yeah, that's funny. He slacked us after the appearance on your show, and we were digging through old Moose Jaw stuff because it was brought up during that podcast, and it was funny to relive a little bit of that with him. But yeah, since 2002, I have been working with Robert and his brother Jeffrey, and they've been crazy enough to build 3 businesses in that amount of time, and I've been crazy enough to join them along on the ride. So.
Yeah, when he and I were talking, he mentioned the catalog you all did at Moose Jaw, that all of your models wore no pants.
Yeah, I think that was one of my brilliant ideas there. Yeah, that was it was during the recession back in the day, and we're like, people can't buy both, so let's just show one. And that was the whole theme of the catalog. So it was a fun photo shoot, and just we were crazy and pushed the envelope, but that was a great time.
Well, now you are also the queen of analogies, as I understand it. Give us an analogy that maybe someone's never heard of before.
An analogy that someone's never heard of before.
Or one of your favorites.
Well, I mean, this one's a little deep, but I teach to my kids. It's about the subconscious and the conscious brain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think of the subconscious brain as like a puppy and the conscious brain as the owner. And whatever you feed to the subconscious brain, it's going to go out and get. So if you think your day's crappy today, and that's what your subconscious brain is hearing from you and your outlook on the day, it's going to run off and fetch other circumstances that are going to relay that back to you. And so I try to teach them about just perspective and how to think about their days and what's happening around them and how they think, so that, I believe that you can adjust your thinking and have a totally different outcome.
So it's kind of the whole Freudian id ego thing. You've got the executive functioning brain up top.
Yeah. Yep.
Trying to control that subconscious that you can't control unless you really pay attention to what you're feeding it.
Yep. So that's one that I throw out a lot.
I'm a big believer. I'd love to get your take on this, that it's really the subconscious mind where all of our buying decisions are being made. And then they just get leveled up to the frontal cortex, that executive functioning brain, to justify that purchase.
Yeah. And you can justify it any which way. And if you believe that that's the purchase for you, you're going to find those reasons that it is the right thing for you. And then you're going to go out and do it. So I believe in all of that. And I love the science of the brain. I think it's fascinating.
And you've got this analogy of the layer cake brand building that we're going to get into in a minute. But let's first talk about you building your career in branding and marketing. How do you find yourself here doing what you're doing?
Well, really, I'm just fortunate to be working with people that believe in brand and find a place for it. Because a lot of times when you're talking to other people, brands seem so ethereal. And so, there's marketing professionals who do true marketing, numbers, data, ad spends, all of those types of things. My brain really is outside of that realm, and Robert's brain is as well. So we were lucky that we paired up and are able to banter amongst each other. And it's like a ping pong table with us when we come up with ideas. And even someone at work the other day said, I don't know why these ideas work, but they just do. For example, we have a series right now on LinkedIn where every Friday we post a picture of Robert at the post office. I don't know if he told you this one. He gets our mail every Friday at the P.O. Box in Royal Oak, Michigan. And he sends us a picture, and it was kind of like a joke to begin with. Just, here I am, I get it at the post office. And I said, I'm going to start posting that on LinkedIn as a Friday feature, because I believe that while it has nothing to do with what we're selling, it's approachable. We're being authentic. We are showing a side of ourselves that isn't so business and, in a box. And then the more people like you, the more they like your product and the more they want to buy from you. So that's been a fun road to navigate throughout the 3 businesses that he started. They've all been completely different, but I think the through line through all of them is that they were serious in nature. Like back when Moose Jaw was started, the first business, rock climbing, camping, that was more hardcore. Everyone wasn't walking around wearing a North Face jacket. This was more, you did that if you were going to camp or you're a hardcore. We wanted to soften that and say, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Like, come on in. Don't be scared to buy a sleeping bag from us. Well, if you've never camped before, we'll help you. The second company, CrowdRise, was making giving back approachable and fun, because back then it was like a Sarah McLachlan commercial of sad puppies, and giving back was not fun. It also was not really public facing. So we wanted to so our slogan was, if you don't give back, no one will like you. So just twisting that. And then now to the board meeting, an investor update software, which sounds the least fun. Really, we think that if your meetings and your workplace and the culture are engaging, that you'll like them better. So that's just kind of the way we've always approached everything.
Yeah, so you really embrace the brand story. And my question for you in your travels, and you're not working, I guess, with so many other companies like you would be if you were in an agency. You've been really involved in the building and the exiting of the first 2 companies, and now with Zeck. And let me add to this that Seth Godin, the marketing guru,
Love
says
him.
people buy your story before they buy your product or service. Why do you think brands discount the power of their brand story and or ignore it altogether?
I think sometimes they don't believe it'll get to my layer cake approach. I feel like that a lot of times people think they could have a surface brand approach and it's a cool logo, it's a little about, but they don't fully embrace it. And sometimes I think that a lot of the brand metrics they're not data driven. You can't measure some of the power of the brand. And so people get caught up in other things and they stop paying attention to the brand. And that's where I think people tend to fall short. I also think they get scared. Like they're a founder or a CEO that might not be in their wheelhouse. And so it's scary for them to relinquish some sort of control when thinking about the brand. Luckily, like I said, we've all been on the same page at the highest level about how important brand is to us. But I do think that it gets lost because people are either scared or they just don't value it the same way.
Yeah. Jeff Bezos says a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I like to revise that a little bit and say your brand is the story people tell about you when you're not in the room. And if you haven't really embedded your brand story of uniqueness and authenticity into them, chances are they're telling a completely different brand story.
Yeah, I think at Moose Jaw, we used to say, we want you to love us so much. We want you to tell, we would say it this way. We'd say, we want you to tell 7 friends about us. And that was whether we ruined your Christmas because the shipment got lost in the mail. Like, we're going to make you don't think you're getting on the call with us and that you're going to come away a believer and tell 6 to 7 friends, but we will find a way to turn that situation into a positive one so that you're telling 6 to 7 friends. So it's the same thing. They're talking behind our back. And those catalogs were very niche sometimes in the humor. But for the people that got it, you had them for life. And those were the super fans. And those were the ones that you could play with and have fun with.
Yeah. Well, you all are in Michigan, and it's been my experience that the Midwest are some of the best people you could possibly hire. And I did at my agency, whenever someone came in with a resume and they were from the Midwest, I always thought of them as the number one candidate because they approach marketing, I think, in a much more human and fun way versus East Coast. Man, they just get so intense, and the West Coast can get so wacky, quote unquote, creative, that it seems like sometimes the stories are lost. Do you, and seeing how you all are from and hanging out in Michigan, there's definitely, to me anyways, this Midwest sensibility to how you go about marketing. Am I just making that up, or do you think that's the thing?
I don't know. I think, now we're all remote and we do have people from all over, but I think that we are maniacal about hiring the right fit. I mean, we like to think of, and here's an analogy. I don't know if you ever shop at Trader Joe's, but we want to be the Trader Joe's of hiring internally. We want you to want to go out for coffee with your coworker. We want it to be a good fit, and it takes us longer to find people. But at the same time, I think half of our staff right now is from prior companies because we've just, developed a culture that people want to still be a part of. So I don't think I have as much experience in picking from all over the country because we have had 2 not brick and mortar, but offices in the Midwest. But I do think that you could find a fit anywhere. It just is going to take longer, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. And I would say your superpower is that you come off as very unpretentious, and in the communications and having fun in some very serious subjects that people kind of shy away from.
Yeah. I mean, we just don't think everything has to be so miserable. I mean, that is really the crux of it. And so when you were talking about East Coast, West Coast, I mean, I do think that a lot of times people put together such trying to be very moving brand stories that have lots of eye candy, and here's why we started it. And really, when it comes down to it, we just don't want things to be miserable at any of our companies. And so the actual product or products we're selling help to solve that in different ways, giving back, going outdoors more, now meetings and your most consequential meetings, if that. But that's really it. So we don't get into this like really deep dive of our backstory because it is it's coming from a place of authenticity, but we don't feel always the need that we have to, spread that all over. I think our brand reflects it without it just being paragraphs on our website, which I think is what we were talking about earlier. I just think that's two different outlooks on how to showcase your brand.
Yeah. So what is your layer cake approach to branding?
I made it up and I have nothing to show for it, but it is how I think. So I always, if I was doing consulting work, I always call my company Layer Cake. But I think that a cake, you can have two cakes and from the outside, they look the exact same. So one could be a box mix that's vanilla with chocolate frosting. There's two layers. There you go. The other one, it can be one layer of vanilla. It could have a Fiatine crunch. It could have a little jam. It could have a pastry cream, and then a different layer of cake, a different layer of frosting, another crunch, some sort of swirl covered in frosting. Now, from the outside, they both look like the same cake. But when you cut into them, there's so many more layers and textures and flavors and things to pop at you in the one cake. And I think, we are very anti that first cake that I was talking about. So when I think about the layers, I'm not thinking about making sure your colors are nice and your logo is pretty and you have the right about. I'm talking about how I will, or we're trained to jot down someone's, if you told me your birthday, for example, I would jot it down, put it in my calendar, send you a note during your birthday, and that's a layer, right? It has nothing to do with my company, but you're like, wow, that Zeck group gets it. They actually heard what I said and are remembering my birthday in May. I just did that to someone the other day who's a partner that we work for. And she was like, how did you remember my birthday? But guess what? She's going to love us. I mean, and the thing is that this is authentic to begin with, but it works. So while it seems like a tactic, it is just naturally the way we did things. And it ended up we're better for it. So another reason or another thing could be you're sending a marketing email, like every single part of that marketing email is a touch point or a layer that could be in this cake that you're building. So down to the unsubscribe link, at our old company, the unsubscribe link has to be there and it is serious, but underneath we might be like, say something funny, about really, you're going to go right now? Like we're just getting started and we'd love to. So just finding those little points is the layering of the cake.
Yeah. And inserting fun little quips and messages in unexpected places to kind of break the static B2B, B2C communications. Like, taking pictures of Robert at the post office every Friday. That's a layer.
That is a layer. And we will couple that with a really cool podcast that someone's doing with, or we have a webinar that we just did with someone who's a badass in the industry that we're in. And that's the post before it. So it's, we pay attention to the real crux of the company, but then layer on, like you said, the human nature of it. We are still just humans trying to get from point A to point B and make our lives better in every way, shape, and form. And we just don't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, that's so cool. Now, when you're working to develop a brand, let's go back to Moose Jaw. It sounds like that was really the first one you did with the Wolf Brothers and get things going. How long and how involved were you in the actual creation and brand story strategy that went into that before you started serving up the layer cake?
I think it's, the layer cake just came to me as an analogy down the road, but I think ever since we started, it's been the same way. I mean, again, I just think we lucked out that we were a group of people who, Robert and Jeffrey started actually stores. And then I started working in the back of a store And one layer that I can explain there is a very tiny little corner in the back of a store. But if you called and placed an order, we would say, hold on, we've got to run out to the warehouse. And we would make it feel like we had this big warehouse where really we were just running out into the store and making sure we had that pink coat that you wanted to buy and layering on. And when we answered the phone, we had to answer it and in a tone that we would say, I haven't done this in years, but it was like, Moose Jaw. Like, it wasn't just like, hi, this is Moose Jaw. It was very intentional, but not intentional. Like, but that's what people grew to love about us, is that we weren't just trying to make the sale. I mean, we would talk to people on the phone about their day. It wasn't just, and I do that now too. Someone on call for a medical bill and I'll be like, hey, how is it go? How was your day today? I mean, I was just ingrained in me to remember that there's a human on the other side of all of these interactions. And so honestly, it's been this way ever since day one.
Yeah, well, again, I think that's the Midwest mentality. I really do. I'm a big believer in that. So jump ahead and I dig into that last question a little bit more. What I guess what I was asking is for people that are out there thinking, you know what, Allison's right. We've got to first dial in our story. Well, we're just showing up and we're just selling a product or service, and we're not, really standing out with our story in any way, shape, or form. So people aren't buying into our story, or maybe not enough, so they're not enjoying that growth that they could have with a really refined brand story. So let's fast forward to the next brand, CrowdRise and or Zeck. How much time went into brainstorming and thinking about the look, the feel, the tone of this cake that is CrowdRise and or Zeck? I mean, because so many people don't do it because they feel like they're completely overwhelmed. I don't have time. I don't want to pay a bunch of money to do this. So how do you guys go about it, and how long does it take?
I mean, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of dedication. And like you're alluding to, there are other things that feel more imminent, that pay the bills faster in terms of, highlighting that quicker. Brand, again, can be very abstract and feel that way to someone. So I think giving it its proper attention in place, hiring someone who has a passion for it and who cares about it is super important. If that's not your strength, but you had the idea and you're passionate about your company, but maybe the branding piece of it is not your strength, like lean on someone. I think that's a super, we don't ever pretend to know everything at any of these companies. We lean on people for their expertise. We also, in every leadership meeting and board meeting, there's a brand section. We talk about what we're doing to build the brand. I mean, that just highlights again that we're paying attention to it and we're making it a priority. I mean, there's a sales section, a marketing section, a brand section, and that is part of our ethos. So I think it just is really paying attention to it and thinking of it, like I said, on the layers. If you're thinking we've got our about page and we've got a little story, but maybe our customer service is kind of boring, so to speak. So when you say you're selling a product, but when customer service comes along, it's very regimented and that's not the vibe you're giving across on your website, there's a disconnect there. So finding those places of disconnect, we strive to have a joyful onboarding, which no one is having fun when they're onboarding to a new technology. But we make it happen because we think if you leave our demo where you talk to someone who was normal to talk to and you got excited about the product and you got excited about what we were selling you, and then you hop over to onboarding, it's just a scratch in the record, that's a problem. So tightening up all of those little spots is really, really important for brand building.
Yeah. Do you think that Robert, and I don't know his brother, I just interviewed Robert, is unique as an entrepreneur because not only is he a founder, but he's also a brander? It just seems like innately he comes across, he's got his own very powerful, fun, personal brand, and it seems like it's an extension into everything else he's doing.
Yeah, I do. I do believe that, but I don't think that you have to be like that to have a successful brand. I think that it propels you and the momentum is quite it's life-changing, the momentum when you have someone who cares so much about brand. But passion is what drives businesses from the start. And so, like I said, if you can find someone who can build on that and help with your brand, but expand on your passion by layering in the brand in different places while you're focused on growing customer count, et cetera, I think that you can marry the two quite easily. But yes, I did luck out in that area.
From your observations of other brands out there, or just hearing maybe war stories, what are some of the mistakes people make when they, legitimately are trying to develop their brand story, but maybe they get detoured along the way? What are some of the mistakes that people should look out for as they're creating their story?
Yeah, well, to piggyback on that last question and answer that I gave, I really think, down to when someone would come up, we did have brick and mortar stores at Moose Jaw and an online aspect. But when someone would come up with their order or with their purchase to the desk, I mean, we had something on like the receipt that you get in the bag was funny. We gave out stickers. We had our boxes that you would get in the mail had a sticker that said "No knife, use teeth." Our truck was funny. And humor isn't necessarily always the answer to a great brand. It just has worked for us, and it just isn't part of our culture. So I think, just again, finding all of those places, I think but culture as well internally is huge. Like if your employees don't believe your brand and know and nail it down exactly, then you're never going to get anywhere. We do internal contests. We have a New York Times Slack channel where we do the connections every day. We are very, very vocal as a remote company, and it makes it feel like we're together. We'll surprise people with cookies. We will do different things. So I think also fostering a culture within your company helps propel the brand as well.
Yeah, it's aligning your people with your vision and your mission and your purpose. That is all encompassing in your brand story and your brand story development. And in our experience too, because working from the agency side and working with companies, one of the most important things we had them do is have your people help co-create this brand. Now, you don't have to have everybody in the room, but boy, have every department represented, every important voice, and even every important influencer. And a lot of times people would think, well, that's a VP or that's a head of sales or whatever. Well, you know what? The influencer that people are really listening to may well be that account executive that you haven't really noticed, and or that customer service rep who's answering phones all day, but everybody in the room, in the brand, in the business, listens to them. And so as you're establishing and building your brand story elements, get those people involved. So that you take their input, you help them be a co-creator in all this, and then they take it back to their people to say, hey, this is really cool what's all coming together.
And guess what? They like their job better. So, and that's not your intention, but it comes full circle, and then it works better. Or if we have someone who suggests something at Zeck or wherever we've been, we will give them public praise, talk about them in a public eye, and be like, this was such a great idea from so-and-so. Thank you so much. Like, we're going to do it. And, really take, I think in the very beginning of this podcast, we said the word ego. Take out the ego. I mean, if you're running a brand with an ego and the control of the ego, then that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to open it up. You got to have some fun. Outside of the brands that you have been working with, the three we've talked about, what is a brand that you really admire that you think is doing a good job kind of using this layer cake approach and having some fun with it?
I'm a Peloton junkie, so I am addicted to Peloton, and I like that it's not just a piece of equipment. They're selling a lifestyle, but their representatives, who are their athletes that are teaching you, are allowed to be personal in their classes so that you develop a relationship with a couple particular instructors, and everyone has their own vibe. But I think back to what we were just saying, like giving people the freedom to embody your brand, but to also be able to do it in their own way. I find that they feel very authentic, and I feel like when I started, I am very I'm picky about brands. And so when I see that, I appreciate that. I'm also a stickler for like a good restaurant experience. Nothing gets me more than paying for like mediocre food. And I don't need fancy. It could be a street taco, but I like to see that, again, someone's paying attention to the layers, that if street taco, the lettuce isn't wilted, that the salsa was fresh. Just, I think a restaurant experience. I sometimes I leave a restaurant and I feel like, God, they could be doing so much better. If they just paid attention to a few little things, like, and it was probably someone who is a really good chef and knows how to make food, but then it got kind of lost when it's distilled down to the sous chef or whoever, and then the brand kind of falls flat, and you can feel that when you're a patron at a place like that. So I appreciate really good restaurants that are able to have their brand really tight and wrapped up, from the food to the service to their menu to the way they talk about the food. I love that.
Yeah. So your first two enterprises, Moose Jaw and Crowdsource, were much more B2C, where you can always have a lot more fun, people think, when you're speaking to consumers versus businesses in the B2B world, which I often call boring to bored. Now, Zeck is definitely a B2B play to get very serious, wealthy board members on board and communicate properly and blah, 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 blah. How do you guys have fun with that brand?
Well, the fun kind of starts back with a pain point, which is a brand staple, is that no one likes these meetings. Like, no one likes going to their board meeting. No one likes being on a board. That's a generalization, but you're usually walking into a board meeting that you over prepared for because you don't know what to give to them because you're a little nervous and you want to give the world. The board members don't want the world. They just want it distilled down, but now they have to read a 100-page deck that is formatted all wonky before the next day, sit in a room for 3 hours, regurgitating the information. Just the whole process was just backwards. And so Zeck was developed to make it so that it's way more of a discussion. We just have a new, we're always changing the way we talk about things, but we say it's not a presentation, it's a conversation. We're not just presenting materials for you to nod your head at and that you already read it the day before. We're trying to create a conversation. So I think really when we're talking to people, they're burnt out. They're miserable because they have to do this, but there's no good way. And so for us to tackle shaving down the prep time of creating these meetings, for the board to come away with real engaging actions that they can serve this company, it brings everyone up to the level that they're supposed to be at. So I think for us to have fun with this brand is to also help make their life less miserable. So if we're giving them a tool to make their life less miserable, we've carved out a little spot for them to have fun. And like the stress decompresses. Now when you're onboarding with us, you're in the mode. You're like, oh, this is going to be great. I don't have to spend 80 hours on this. I'm going to spend 2. And so we're already taking that away from you. And then we're layering in the fun. So maybe you'll get a movie quote and like, let's stop right now. Anyone know this movie quote? If you do, raise your hand. I'll send you a t-shirt. And we make it a point to make the onboarding process, like I said, joyful. And then if you're following us on LinkedIn or social media, we don't post a lot, but what we do post is curated to bridge that gap between very business, so you know what we sell. And then also so that you're like, these people are approachable and they are normal and they actually are solving a pain point that happened to them. And we're not just selling BS, like we're selling a real emotional weightlifting of sorts. So I think this particular company has been able to capture that in that way. And we'd love to, try to align ourselves with companies who have been doing this, who aren't stuck in the old way of doing things and are finding more modern ways so that we can have a more fun, relaxed enjoyable work life and work life balance.
Yeah. So one of the layers of that cake then is like the movie quotes, sort of
Yeah.
surprising to them, but you're kind of loosening them up. But if you're out there marketing to get people to pay attention to Zeck and get involved, could you give us examples of 2 or 3 creative layers that you are particularly proud of that are kind of unsuspecting or unexpected in the B2B world, especially the board world, and how you guys kind of broke that fourth wall with the fun in the communication?
Yeah, so Zeck is a platform, and so it's kind of hard to show it just from going to the website and learning about us until you get on a demo. But we decided to make frameworks available. So you can put in your email address and a couple other little registration form feedback, and then you get access to an example Zeck. So the product is called a Zeck. It's not a deck, it's a Zeck. So a lot of people, that's a great tool for us. A lot of people are asking requests to access the sample Zecks. Well, within that, so really it's a framework, like you should put a CEO summary here, make sure you have an agenda here. So it's very much, you know, a critique of how we think you should run a board meeting. But within that, back to the movie quote, like, or we may misspell something on purpose. And then the next paragraph say, did you catch that misspelling? If you did, email us here and we'll send you a picture of a fork. I mean, the crazier, the better, because then people are like, are they really going to send me a picture of a fork? Yes, we will. Everyone is trained to have a picture of a fork in their back pocket that they can send to you. And all of a sudden, bam, you're like, okay, this product makes sense. Plus, they're sending me a fork. Like, I got to learn more. I have to dig in and learn more. So that's one of them. Even being just, we work with a lot of partners and a lot of partners that can have more serious of tone, but we're trying to affiliate with them and bring to life this work-life balance and how to transform these very consequential meetings in your company. So these are, lawyer groups and very big corporate director groups. But on those, we stay true to ourselves and we'll do trivia in the beginning, or we will brand ourselves within those appearances as well, which I think a lot of people kind of skip over that. They try to mold into whoever they're talking to, and it becomes very flat. But we want everything to be notable and everything to be memorable, really.
Mm-hmm. And that's the whole goal. And again, kind of what we say, arouse and fulfill. So,
Yeah.
hey, if you caught that typo, email us, and we're going to send you an email or a photo of a fork, and you're going, oh, I'm aroused. Okay, curious. What I mean by arousal is curiosity. Yeah. Really? Are they really going to do that? And then you fulfill it, and they go, well, this is pretty fun. Not only does their platform seem to be legit, but these people just seem to be different and fun and human.
Yeah, and if you're, again, we always say, like, this is not intentional, but it is. Like, this isn't a tactic that we are using to, like, pull the wool over anyone. Like, this is truly, back to your Midwestern, this is truly how we are. And it just we just got a following from that. And so we keep doing it. We just keep doing it because we find that people find it refreshing. So when you're looking at all our competitors, we're not only standing out because we feel like our product is better fit for you. We're going to stand out when you look at review sites now. The reviews are great for the product, but they're amazing for the service. And you don't see that with competitors because we've built the brand and we've paid attention and we've had trainings and we've had a real magnifying glass on drafts, making like we never would say something like best regards, we would never say that. So we will comb through all the text all the content that's going out there and make sure it is aligned with our speak,
Mm-hmm.
and it is amazing to see the feedback that we get, because I think most companies get feedback on their product. We get feedback on our product and equally good feedback on how we are as people and how it is to talk to people at Zeck. And so if you're looking at these review sites and you're comparing, you're naturally going to feel a little warmer going into that lead as a customer, knowing that you're getting on a not so boring demo.
Yeah. And you are arming people to go and tell your story when you're not in the room.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. we send a dozen cookies to people before their first board meeting, a certain amount of people. But we can't, the reason why we chose cookies, again, this is a meeting that we've had multiple times, because I feel like a normal company would send flowers or send a fruit basket or send something, but that doesn't leave, there's no you're not aroused, right? There's no memory from that. So I found a girl who would do custom cookies, and I had her write on them. And one of the cookies is, this is a cookie to eat or throw at the worst board member. And then another cookie is branded with our name on it. And another cookie is something that says best board meeting ever. And again, they're in a serious meeting. But when they're looking at it, it's not just like these sandwiches were sponsored by Zeck. No, it's like, what, but we find so much delight in that layer of that cake right there, that we surprised you with cookies, one, but two, that they say something that sparks like a little humor when you're in this meeting. So that's another example.
Now, Allison, do you have a book or anything that kind of talks about this approach? And if not, what are some of the resources or books you might recommend to our listeners that have had an impact on you?
Well, I do not have a book. This is all in my brain.
Sounds like you should write one.
I just look to brands that I like and just kind of analyze them. And I really think it's just a lot of it is up here. For people, I think looking at Zeck's website and seeing that we are truly selling a software, and then you're going to find a Wedding Crashers quote above the fold, and just letting that sink in, that we're still in business, that was not a fail on our part. Like that brought us more customers. Like, it doesn't have to be so serious. So looking at all the past businesses is really, really my only avenue right now.
Yeah. Well, Allison, thank you so much for taking time to be here. I really appreciate it. Where can people learn more about you and Zeck?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Zeck.app. I can give my personal phone number, maybe my address.
Send you cookies?
Send me cookies. Yeah. These are always the way.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you loved our show this week as much as I did bringing it to you. And if you know of anyone else who would like to learn Allison's layered cake approach to branding, well, by all means, share this episode with them. And if you do me a huge favor and jump over and give us a rating and review on iTunes, well, maybe I'll send you a cake. Anyways, I'm really happy that you are here with us today. And by golly, if we can help you refine your brand story, go check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. You're going to love it. I hope you'll join us next Monday when one of my all-time favorite marketers is going to be here, Mark Schaefer. He's going to talk about his new book, Audacious, How Humans Win in an AI Marketing World. And hey, the timing couldn't be better because I ran Mark's brand through our AI agent, the Story Cycle Genie, and sent him the findings about his brand story strategy. I'm curious to hear what he thinks. Until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one irresistible. Thanks so much for listening.